we're really, really happy to be able to gather everybody on Tuesday, the 24th of March for our very first virtual town hall. And since then, every week have been presenting and featuring different HITEC members and experts to really be able to keep everybody up to date on relevant topics related to what we're all currently going through, cybersecurity in a time when everybody or almost everybody is remote working. And we're extremely excited about the presentation today from a long-time HITEC member and supporter and all-around great guy, Miguel Gamiño, who is the Executive Vice President of Global Cities and Enterprise Partnerships for Mastercard. Prior to joining Mastercard, Miguel served as the Chief Technology Officer of the City of New York, leading the Mayor's Office of the Chief Technology Officer. Prior to that role, Miguel was the CIO of the City and County of San Francisco, as well as the CIO of the City of El Paso, where he grew up. Prior to joining the public sector, Miguel was an entrepreneur developing some of the earliest cloud-based services and launching 2 companies based in El Paso, Texas and Silicon Valley, California, both of which operated nationwide. So we're excited to hear from Miguel today around this idea of when doing well by doing good becomes an essential service, something that I think is incredibly relevant and topical today. Now, Miguel is ready to present, but he asked me to make sure that I told all of you today that we want to do this, and one of the reasons we're doing this as a meeting rather than as a webinar here on the Zoom platform is, we want this to be a dialogue. And so if you have questions, if you want to point something out, you want to interrupt Miguel, feel free to do that because we want to make this as interactive as possible. So with that, once again, thanks for joining us today, and I'll turn it over to Miguel.
Yeah, thank you. It's really an honor to be part of this familia and to be given the opportunity to share with you kind of the story that has happened or that has assembled over time, really before this current reality, and then I think will be lasting long after this reality. And so the reason that I titled the talk, doing well by doing good becomes an essential service, is that was my way of describing how these 2 worlds collided. And I also, to emphasize Omar's point, I call it a talk because I hope we can engage in some dialogue. I expect to take away from this conversation probably more than I even contribute. So I really mean that when I say I hope we can talk. But the reason for the title as a theme is the company as a whole has really, for the last decade, created a culture, not just a motto or a mantra, but a true culture around this concept of doing well by doing good, that we as a private sector company, as a commercial entity, should be able to find ways to have positive social impact in a way that is also commercially viable, that those 2 worlds not only should coexist, but one could argue must coexist. And that was our conversation literally going back 10 years and many, many years, obviously way before I was with the company, but investing heavily in this concept of financial inclusion and inclusive growth and all of those elements. And so what happened when the pandemic hit and this concept of an essential service started to emerge, and it occurred to me that not at all to take away from those people who are on the real front lines of delivering healthcare and delivering food and other life essentials. The culture of doing well by doing good stepped up to the front line. And what I mean by that is all of a sudden we were not just positioned, but almost obligated to be responsive to this that was happening around the world. Number one, because we have presence around the world, and we have employees and partners and customers and, you know, legitimate kind of stake, if you will, in all these parts of the world. But because our culture was already mobilized in that direction to think about how we should be as an organization, always looking to have positive social impact. And so what I'm going to try to do is describe to you some of how we're doing that as an organization, and specifically my team, how we're doing that. And also talk a little bit about how it's happened to me, and I am managing it in my personal life, because I think there's also an important theme here, that is those two are blended together for certain right now, and potentially forever in the future. And so those are at a high level the things that I thought would be fun for me, at least, to share and get feedback and input and thoughts from this amazing brain trust, as I, like many, continue to learn through this process as much as I'm capable of also sharing through this process. So a bit of specifics around my role. So I, as Omar mentioned, I'd previously for about 8 years worked in public service, and I met many of you during that journey of my life, working in El Paso, San Francisco, and New York City. And that really gave me an important sense of the critical nature, the essential nature of public service, and never knew how it would manifest itself into my life today, but it's more and more becoming a really important input into who I am and what I do today. And I joined the company. Actually, I got an email today. It's 2 years with Mastercard today, I think. So this is my anniversary of sorts. And in that very long but short period of time, we turned a strong foundation of engagement with cities into a full-blown strategy and even kind of leadership role in this ecosystem, shaping the ecosystem. And so this is something we call City Possible. And I'm responsible for this globally. So I'm still based in Brooklyn. I'm sitting in Brooklyn right now. But literally, you know, touching 210 countries around the world is our scope, if you will. So what we did with this is we started with the framework of relationships, and that these relationships, particularly with governments, really matter. And so that is the centerpiece of the strategy that we call City Possible. So we had started in November of 2018, building this platform and this network. And now it's well over 100 cities in this network, just less than 2 years later. And that was always intended, pre-coronavirus, to inform us about what actually mattered to these cities, what mattered to the people living in these cities, and directing how we should engage our own assets and our partners in helping those cities achieve their goals of prosperity, so to speak. And I give you that background, number one, just so you know kind of what my day job is or was. But then coronavirus hit, and everything I just described was amplified, was accelerated. None of it was set aside. It's not like me and my team were making widgets and we put those widgets to the side to make different widgets in response to coronavirus. The widgets, relationships, and solutions and things that we were working on were already spot on. I credit it to the fact that we had been asking cities what they needed in the service of their people anyway. And again, it was all inspired by this underlying ethos of social impact plus commercial viability is the answer. So we were already in the right sports analogy. We were already in the right 3-point stance. right? We were already aimed at the right target. And so when coronavirus happens, the phone blows up. Literally just 24/7. My team has been just working around the clock. I tell people we're effectively an extension of the emergency operations center in well over 100 cities globally, that we're taking calls and helping with solutions in real time. And that was only possible because we already had this do well by doing good ethos. We could respond so quickly because we were already there, culturally, philosophically. And so, and we had built trusted relationships with these governments. So this is my long-winded intro, if you will, to say that never more than now is the authenticity of that type of engagement and a true blending of social impact and corporate strategy more important. And this is one of those things that I think might be a lasting positive consequence of what we're experiencing today, is that social responsibility isn't something on a banner hanging in the office somewhere anymore. Right now, it's being demonstrated, it's being exemplified, and it's being almost expected in many of these scenarios. So, Viv, if you can pull up the next slide. I'm going to show you just a snapshot of some of the things that we're doing to get a little bit more concrete. Again, hopefully all of this is just inspiring questions and even challenges back to me about what we're doing and what might or might not matter. We really pulled in on the network, the crowding of expertise and brain power that we had already developed. So when one city started calling, we didn't just end there. We always openly said, hey, I got a similar call from this other city, or I talked to a partner who might be able to offer something here. And so we were always playing this role of convener, and that by itself was a big factor in accelerating the progress that we made. And also important to say, across sectors. So almost straight away, within a week or two of things really hitting hard, we organized and convened our global group on a Zoom session, actually, with our partner, Harvard University, to have the first group conversation. But what's really powerful about that was it wasn't the first time most of these people were seeing each other. We'd already had group sessions together. We used to have them in person, but we already knew each other and had a basis of trust that was really important to accelerating the partnership in this particular direction. And then this turned into a couple of very specific problem statements that came to us that we were able to address. One was from city of Los Angeles, pretty well documented. It's out there on my social channels and out there in the media. Something that I internally refer to as donations to disbursements, but Mayor Garcetti launched as the Angelino campaign. And it was all about a phone call we got from the mayors from LA on a Sunday that was, we need help helping people, was almost how the question was posed, as broadly as that. And 8 days later, 8 days, team, we had the mayor at the podium in his daily evening address launching the platform. That included a hashtag and a text to donate. If you text LA Love to 21,000, it will reply to you. You can make a donation to the Angelino Fund directly. And now they are in the process actively still of giving cards to these disadvantaged families so they can take that money and distribute it directly to those families. This again was built in 8 days, but launched, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks ago, maybe now. Time blurs, as for me as it is probably for everybody. And that has already raised $10 million. This is just a local effort in LA. When the program got launched and was open for applicants, it crashed. They had 400, almost 500,000 applicants. By the way, from like 130 or some odd cities nationally. This was a program designed for City of Los Angeles that was getting inbound applicants from 130 some odd other cities in the country, which demonstrated the need, the application, and our, again, further call to action to scale this. So we are actively responding to a number of cities taking something similar out on the, you know, across the broader group of cities. This might sound like something that other levels of government are also trying to do, but I impress upon you how quickly we were able to move with the local jurisdiction on the basis of that partnership, that relationship being built around this concept of mutual interest and doing well by doing good. We also leveraged our data insights, particularly in New York, as kind of a reference case. The mayor was able to launch his budget just this past week and had a call to action in that budget that there is a shortfall. And some of that, not all of it, but we were able to help them understand better elements of the economic impact of the virus on the New York City economy. And so it was a factor into the Office of Management and to the budget process for New York City. And we're taking these again on the road, not only across the country, but literally around the world. And then lastly, next we offered a partnership with a group of Bitwise Industries and the Caper Center in California, and launched something called Onward California that takes sort of the LA story and expands it into helping displaced workers, basically furloughed workers or otherwise displaced people, find other bits of jobs or work that they can do during this crisis and give them access to life essentials and those sorts of things. And that's scaling across the country right now. The state of Colorado just announced it, I think yesterday or the day before, and we're actively pursuing that. And then last but certainly not least is we activated the rest of our partnership base. So we had leaned in really heavily, very quickly with cities and state governments and other levels of government. And our partners, our traditional partners recognized that and came in too. And so we activated a partnership with Lyft, as an example, in the Bay Area, having drivers deliver not only transportation services, but delivery of food and other critical supplies to low-income seniors and other families with children while schools are closed in that area. And now, again, consistency here too is trying to figure out how to, okay, work there, how do we take it elsewhere? And so the point of this is just to give you some concrete examples of things that we were able to do in a really quick amount of time because we were already well positioned, because this was not a checklist somewhere to be a corporate social responsibility, but that it was authentic and very quickly able to mobilize the company. So if you can go to the next slide. I want to give you a sense of the scale that we're also trying to cover. This is, previously we had been talking with cities and states and even regions about even disaster response things that we could help with. But we were always in that world, we were always thinking about it like a fire or an earthquake or a flood, tragically impacting a community or a region, but thankfully limited to a community or a region typically. We didn't anticipate that this would hit globally almost all at once. And so what I'm showing you here is a pre-COVID map of our cities of engagement. So we were already, again, well positioned. We were already in that 3-point stance to be engaged authentically with trusted relationships all over the world. And again, I mentioned this earlier, but the image there is a synopsis of the first set of convenings we did around the world to bring these cities together and have them listen to each other as much as us listen to them about the challenges that they were experiencing in real time. And those online meetings have continued and are a big factor in the success that we've had in acting fast. And then the last bit of kind of setup here that I want to talk about on the next slide is, so far I've talked about, you know, this doing well by doing good from a Mastercard perspective, from a commercial or a private sector partner perspective, from what we could do as a company with our resources and our teams. But it's been pretty well cataloged, documented, that our lives have intertwined, have commingled in real time also. And so I think that is also true for the concept of doing well by doing good, that it is not just business, it is personal. We have no choice but to consider it as such these days. And so, you know, thinking about how to work with each other, and help other people, but do so in a way that still takes care of ourselves. And the images that I share here are a Zoom meeting or a Skype meeting that I have with my team every day. And one of the days we decided to add video. By the way, we don't do video every day, and that's something we can talk about. I think that that's an important thing to balance too. But one day we did decide to do them all video, and the team, true to form in terms of our culture, decided that what better time but to put on a Halloween costume parade of their own masks. And so they surprised me. I was dressed a lot like this, but it's just I think a good image to remember that, particularly when we're connected with each other digitally, on the other end of that digital connection, it's still a human, it's still a person who is trying to navigate this new reality in their own world at the same time that they're trying to stay engaged with the external world in these new ways. And so I've thought a lot about what that means for me personally. And you know, our patriarch in many ways, Guillermo, everyone knows as G, invited me to a Facebook series, and that forced me to think about that element more closely. And these are kind of the 4 points that I've landed on for myself, which was, you know, to be purposeful and to have purpose on purpose, right? To think about all the stuff I've talked about. What could I was pulled into it largely involuntarily because of the nature of my job and our company. But even if that's not the case for you, thinking about, you know, the reality that people, not just you, but people around you, I believe thrive with purpose. And so finding that in this new world is really important, so that we're not only contributing to help others, but as they say, it's the selfless acts are selfish rewards, right? So I think thinking about that really, really carefully is super important to stay strong during this. And then I think also finding ways to get better. I know there's lots of push-up challenges. Many of you on this session are posting push-ups. I'm also trying to maintain some physical fitness by eating better and drinking less, and starting to ride my Peloton, but also thinking about the other elements of fitness, and getting better, right? So I've thought about ways to educate myself. I'm reading books. I completed a long list of things that were on an old to-do list that I was able to find time to accomplish, which in one of the books I'm reading right now, I've been reminded is my dose of dopamine, that is the reason it feels so good to get some of those things off that list. But it's also personally enriching. I'm educating myself in ways that I just previously never had time for. And then being connected differently. And I've alluded to this with my team, but also with the people around you. We're sitting in here in these Zoom sessions, trying to maintain some form of normalcy with our kind of professional lives, and having Zoom sessions with our friends. And trying to figure out how we manage a world where all of those things that used to occur in different venues. We used to engage with our coworkers at the office and our friends in social environments, and then our families maybe at home. And now it's one venue and all those different stakeholder groups. And how do we balance that and blend across it, but also keep and respect appropriate kind of boundaries, and not forgetting that while I'm in here in this Zoom session with you, literally out on the other side of the wall are my family, and they're humans, and this is also an opportunity to invest more time in connecting with them. And while the memory for us that are older of this situation might be, empty grocery store shelves and Zoom sessions and wearing masks and gloves and being concerned for our health, or even, more tragic outcomes. I hope that my kids, who are very young, I hope when they're older, that their memory of this will be, wow, dad was home a lot more for at least that period of time. And we had dinner together a lot more often. And you help, and that we create those memories and those moments right now. And that's I'm a glass half full guy. And I think that is my true belief, that this is an opportunity for us to reset some of those elements of our lives. And so, and then last is just to emerge fit, to emerge more fit than we were going into it. And I say that intentionally to kind of pull on the push-ups challenges, but more broadly, can we emerge from this as better people, more empathetic of one another, better appreciation for the fact that the person on the other side of that text message, or that WhatsApp chat, or that Zoom call is a human who has family who might be in the other room. Even when we get back to whatever the new normal is going to look like, remembering that that we're dealing with humans, and hopefully, before all of this, I used to talk about the need for. I thought that the world needed more empathy to kind of heal some of the strains that we've experienced in recent history. And in some ways, maybe this is forcing it. I hope that we come out of these times a stronger group of individuals, that we each make our own selves better and more patient and more respectful and more empathetic and more decent to one another. And so that when we go back to the office, if and when that happens, that we will treat each other more kindly, and as a result, do well by doing good, as a rule of life, not just as a motto. And so that's really the setting that I wanted to set. You can kill the slides, Viv. I think that was the thesis, if you will, that I wanted to get out there and share with you. It's how I'm thinking about this current scenario. I'm also thinking a lot about what life will be like afterwards, how that will impact our business and our personal lives. So now I'm gonna, no pressure, but now I'm gonna hope that I've provoked some reaction, positive or negative. I'm open to the criticisms. If anything I said sounds ridiculous to you, I would love to take away from this some input from all of you, or any of you, about how I can think about this construct for my life better and better.
Hey, Miguel, this is G.
Yeah, familiar voice. I see you.
How are you? I like all your points, and your last point that you dropped, which is really when you talk about this whole thing that we're doing during these times around whether it's push-ups or whatever the heck you do, right? It doesn't have to be push-ups, but you talk about emerging fit, and I think what you're saying is really around. It's fit from, we have an opportunity to do things that maybe we didn't do because we didn't have time. physically, but also it's about, that alignment with your, sort of emotional fitness, your spiritual fitness, and even your intellectual fitness. Like, we have a big opportunity to really kind of create that new, if we talk about this new normal, we have an opportunity to create our own new normal coming out of this, right? And I think that's what you're getting at, not just
Yeah.
about physical part, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, also it's forcing a recognition, right, that we're more alike than maybe we thought, which goes to my idea of empathy, right? Um, this virus might be, more dangerous to certain demographics than others, but it swept around the world. It didn't respect, it didn't look at a border and say, oh wait, no, I'm not gonna go there, right? And so I think it's also helping remind us or elevate the humanity of it. And so I think, yeah, like, not to be overly philosophical, but it has forced that thinking about what does it mean. And I think also there's a lot of discussion about mental health in this time, when it's harder to shut off the work when it's in your living room or in your kitchen. And what does that do? It's harder to have space, particularly, I live in New York. I'm blessed with a fairly big apartment, but a lot of people are like literally living on top of each other. And that can cause emotional strain through the relationships and those sorts of things. So yeah, I think it is a time, we're exercising not just our bodies through push-ups, but our emotional wellness, fitness. We're being challenged. And I think a group like this in particular, who better than to demonstrate how we would rise to that challenge and use these moments to encourage each other, but not only people in HITEC, but the people around us to think about those other sorts of things that we can do to make ourselves better when this is all over.
Hi, Miguel. Jason Herrera. A couple of things resonated with me. One is the world's changed, and it's never going to be the same. The way that we look at business, the way that we operate in business, the mandates that people had, the antiquated ideas of everyone needed to be in an office to actually function, and so on, they've gone by the wayside. We have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that everyone can actually function outside of the office virtually, and things can continue on in a way that nobody ever thought. So I think that this is kind of a ground zero of really catapulting the digital age to a whole new level that nobody even expected to go. Another thing that I've noticed is, and I live in Hoboken, just so you know, there's a sense of community that is resounding. We are not just doing the 7 p.m. clap for the shift change of the nurses and doctors and the medical staff, but there's this sense of community where, hey, I'm running to the store. Do any of my neighbors need anything? Oh, I see my neighbor needs something. Let me go and help you with that. We're becoming far more living lives of service than we were, where we had so many things going on that it was very easy to become tunnel vision about what was important to us. And now we're starting to think what's important to the community as a whole. And I think that's an incredibly welcome change from the perspective of just everybody moving forward. The last thing is the exercise of the physical. And I'm a CrossFitter. I've been doing it for about 6 years now. And what we do with a number of my friends and such at the gym is we actually have a weight loss competition going on right now. And everybody threw $50 into the pot. At the end of all of this, whoever loses the most weight, we all take that money and we buy dinner. It's a guy's night out, or it's a guy's girl's night out, however we want to do it. But the whole idea is to think outside the norm, be honest, be someone with integrity, don't cheat the system, but leverage whatever we can to try to progress ourselves. So I think there's a number of things here that have changed, and in doing so, I'm hoping are going to make us better business, but also just better people in general.
Yeah, no, I very well said, and I think spot on. I think it is having us rethink priorities and relationships and all of those sorts of things. And I think that Jason, that actually blends well into a question that came in the chat about you know, I'm paraphrasing. Well, one of the question, why did it take a pandemic to be able to mobilize quickly? And I think the short answer is priorities, right? This forced a reprioritization, because this wasn't just an economic impact where we could just say, oh, it's just about money, right? It really, you know, whether you believe in Mother Nature or whatever your, you know, sense of belief is, what it did do was bring it to kind of the root, right?
Yes.
Life, health, life safety. There is no more fundamental thing than being concerned for that, right? And so I think that's what's helped really push things so quickly is like, oh wait, all of a sudden we're talking about life and death, as they say. That has a tremendous ability to accelerate, reprioritize, kind of reframe things that we used to debate about loosely in the past. All of a sudden you're forced to get serious. And that actually blends back to my time in public service. Before I went into government, I worked in the private sector. I had a couple startups. I think Omar mentioned in the intro. And in those days, what was at risk was money. Worst case, if I made a terrible decision, someone could lose their job, but that was it, right? And in my world at that time, that was a lot. That was, you know, that was a big deal. But then I go to work in government, and the second day on the job in El Paso, I got a call from the press office, and they said, hey, the media wants to talk to you about first responders average response time going down, you know, extending by 2 seconds. And I said, wait a minute, I'm the tech guy. And it was impacted by technology, and it was a real thing. That it was new system, blah blah blah. The details don't necessarily matter, but what landed on me was like, oh wow, this is life and death.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went through my mini, like, you know aha moment when I realized that the stakes were higher. And I think this is a global version of that little thing that I kind of can tell a story about, which is this was no longer just about, you know, the price of oil and things like that. Those are also real, and I'm not minimizing them, but this got, you know, the stakes got higher, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that is a tremendously unifying opportunity when all of humanity has a common enemy. Mm-hmm. Right? That doesn't, I mean, that happens, I guess, maybe 100 years. I think it's 102 years since the last global pandemic, right? Okay. So the world is different this time, and we certainly have a different set of tools available to us. We didn't have Zoom, we didn't have Netflix, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have lots of things that we didn't have to stay better connected and maybe to stay healthier mentally and physically. But that's I think, to you know, building on your point, but then also addressing a bit of what was asked in the chat. That's what's driving this. Is nothing is more important. And then the last bit is on the technology implications. Yeah, I think everyone who has maybe felt a little intimidated by Zoom or video chats, or not wanted to buy that computer or that monitor or that thing to make it more comfortable to operate in this digital future, or even worse, some people who don't have access to it. that reality has, that cheese has moved, right? Companies have had to make those investments in work from home realities. And what has surfaced also as an absolutely critical need, which by the way, I'm very well documented as having advocated for very vocally. So this is not a Mastercard thing. This is a Miguel Gamiño thing from years back, that broadband is an essential service. People should have access, particularly if in a world like, in a scenario like this, when the new norm becomes working from home or learning from home, then no different than there are school bus systems to make sure kids of all backgrounds can get to school. Internet now is the new school bus, right?
Mhm.
The internet needs to be available so that all those kids can get to the virtual classroom. So I think, I'm hoping, like, again, I'm a glass half full, silver linings guy, 100%. I'm really hoping that this forces that conversation. When we get past the realities of the health crisis, and we start to think about, things that we can learn and do better, I really hope that stays on the list, or at the top of the list, is making sure everyone has access to this digital future, now and going forward. So
One of the things that I think would be interesting is that when this is all over, I mean, as we see that once humans have stopped going out and we quarantined, you notice that animals came back to where they weren't before. Wildlife is starting to resurge. Dolphins were in Venice. Like, there's craziness going on as far as the world healing itself. And one of the things that I can only hope for is that we as humans can see that what we're doing is detrimental to the planet on a multitude of layers. And hopefully we learn from this and could put into effect things that will allow the healing to continue, so that we have a really great, if you will, restart from a planet we were handed, and can give our next generation, even secondary, tertiary generations down the line, a planet that's in far better state than the one we were handed.
yeah, I agree. I think what's been demonstrated is both the fragility and resiliency of the planet and humanity. And I mean, it's Earth Day, right? Yesterday or today. So you're right on message there. But I think, being able to, like you said, to bear witness to the Earth healing itself in some way, at least some aspects, but also recognizing how robust and resilient we are as a species, as humanity, that we can handle very challenging situations. And again, I argue that folks like us need to make sure that we don't just survive through this, but that we thrive as a result of this. And that sounds a little bit like a Hallmark saying or whatever, but I mean it. And that's the essence of my personal kind of points that I made there, was to the Earth is healing in some areas, like you mentioned, but we need to do that as people too, I think.
Hey, Miguel, Brooklynite here as well. Although
Yeah.
now working from Orlando, I didn't make it back to New York. I'm from a bed, which is a difference from my regular workplace. So my comment was, this is very interesting because I've been working from home for over 10 years now. So it is a little surprising to me to see this recurrent topic that, wow, it is amazing that people can actually deliver from home when my entire team works remotely and they have been successful for years. So that point is kind of interesting. And it's even more interesting because now it's really challenging to work from home. Because one thing is for me to have my desktop in my office and work there. And another one is to have the kids, the wife, or the husband, everybody around and try to make time. So if we can work remotely now, you can sure as hell work remotely every day of your life. But well, that was my comment. But what I wanted to go to that ties with your point is that what really has amazed me in this time is how open we have become. For example, I saw Romulo with his kid a few minutes ago. He was sitting right next to him, and we see the pets. We see our lives happening, you know, next to us and around us. And in my case, it's been interesting because I've got to learn from my team way more than I did before. So in some aspects, I think that this whole situation has been really positive for us because we get to know each other at a very different level, and at least that's something that I'm appreciating a lot.
So spot on. Also, very good point. And you know, at Mastercard, we have some internal things that are like, we have this pass the iPhone thing where executives are recording in their own homes, you know, a little bit of their daily life, not just what you see in my Zoom window, right? But on the other, behind the scenes, right? And it occurred, I thought about it the other day. I'm like, why didn't we do that before? Like, why that's not just valuable now, that's probably human always, right? And so I hope some of those things carry forward. And then one point that I want to make on that subject, from a leadership standpoint, is it's our responsibility as leaders to reduce that anxiety for those folks that work for you, or and even if they don't report to you, but like the people that you can give permission to, or you know, it's okay to have the dog run in the background. And what I did with my team, and I'm blessed with just an absolutely amazing team. No offense to everyone else on the call, but I have the best team on the planet. So we'll just leave that right there. But so we have a great kind of rapport already, and most of us work remotely already. So we were kind of in that vibe. It was an adjustment, as you said, now that there were, you know, other people were having to work from home. But the point is, even though that we were pretty well acclimated to it already, I made a point of telling my team in the very beginning, it's okay if the dog barks. I don't want to hear anyone apologizing for the kid running behind you or the dog, like, because every time someone apologizes, the rest of the team says, oh, no, that's okay. But it's still, like, in my view, it's still psychologically different, right? And so you just say it up front, and it was my job as the leader to set that rule. No one else was going to do it, right? And it was my obligation to set the new tone and say, I don't want to hear you apologizing for noise in the background. Just put yourself on mute, or whatever, right? It's okay, and that's the last we're going to talk about it, kind of thing, right? And then again, you saw the pictures. My team, because they're amazing, took it a step further and decided to wear crazy masks on a Zoom call, and we spent the first, 20 minutes of that call laughing and making sure everybody would speak, so that everyone would come up on the screen, so I could take everybody's pic, like, and by some measures you might say, oh, we wasted 30 minutes of that meeting. I don't think so. I think, and I just let it happen. I wasn't trying to bring it back to the agenda. And so listen, I don't know if I'm right or wrong. I'm not saying that my way is the right way, but it's working for us. And so I challenge the people in leadership roles, official leadership roles or unofficial, that you help each other that way. Not by telling them it's okay that your dog barked, but telling them that it's not even something to talk about. So anyway, I appreciate you bringing up that point. Absolutely.
The only thing I do take offense, actually, because it's the HITEC team that's on this call that is the best team on the planet. So I'm just right?
Well, that's my team too, isn't it? Isn't that?
Yeah, I know.
Okay,
But
all right,
I'm just putting it out there.
Well, I'm here. Yeah, I'm sure no one recognizes me because I don't see any Hewlett Packard people on this call, but to loop back around, I love New York, but we won't be going this summer there. And I grew up in Texas in the middle of nowhere. El Paso was a city compared to us. I'm from Uvalde, and my parents are still there. They're elderly. HEB, the biggest grocery store out there, they set up their curbside ordering system so fast, so easy. I can send my parents groceries now. They don't have to worry about it. And just before this call, probably about an hour before it, I was on the phone with one of our guys. It was a case and he was sending me a message. So I just went ahead and called him just randomly. I'm like, let me call this guy and see what he's talking about. And we got to chatting for a minute. And we were talking about how we used to see each other in the hallways at work. And all of a sudden I hear the sweet lady talking about, sweetheart, I got food for you. And, so I'm like, put her on speaker. It turned out it was his 80-year-old grandmother there. And he was like, I'm so grateful to be able to work from home because he's been at his mom's and his grandmother lives there. And so she's spoiling him because he's working. So she's bringing him food. And she just came back from the doctor's appointment. So she was chatting with me and she was like, I like you. She goes, when we get back to normal, I'm going to have to bring you food. And I'm like, please do. And it was just that moment that, you think about other people. And I know in my neighborhood, I have an old pug who's snoring next to me. And he has a stroller. And the older people will stop me from across the sidewalk and they'll be talking and chatting. And I just make sure, even though they're messing up my time, I'll stop my jog and I'll stand there and chit chat with them because they're somebody's parents, somebody's grandparents, and they can't see their family. So the least I can do is let them talk to my dog,
Isn't that a beautiful irony that in a moment of literally social distancing that we're actually maybe getting better connected?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's something it's something that shouldn't ultimately replace those person-to-person connections or in real life type connections, but should serve as like a new call to action. So when we do come out of this, that we don't just immediately gravitate back to what was the previous social distancing. We used to sit next to each other and ignore each other. That was a different kind of social distancing, right? And so it's an interesting irony, I think, that we should continue to think about. So
Miguel,
thank you for sharing that story.
Miguel, this is Delia. I'd love to take that, what each of my colleagues have just talked about, and kind of pivot that back. And let's just amplify for a minute, because I know we're getting ready to close. In regards to Mastercard's City Possible mantra, which is making tech work for people. A very powerful, substantive call to action, if you will. So can you amplify a bit more? And let's talk about where Mastercard and the City Possible mantra is taking it. So what is Mastercard, what is this organization community doing substantively to make tech work for people?
Yeah. No, thanks for that. So, and I'll real quick break down the phrase, right? So the way I described it a couple years back was, it's about making technology. So that's the make tech part. And even tech making work. But all of this should be for people, is kind of the messages in the message, if that makes sense. And so, the stuff I described that we're doing in LA is the way that we've applied that to the coronavirus response. But before that, it was in the service of homeless individuals. We were already thinking about, like I said, natural disasters, just not pandemics. Thinking about people returning from incarceration, immigrant populations, people who are going from one kind of skill set to another. And our technology in that particular case is payments technologies, data technologies, those sorts of things. Mm-hmm. But make tech work for people is a way of reminding us that this is for people. Wow. So we don't go to city governments or state governments and say, I've got this widget. Do you have something for, like, I have this solution. Do you have a problem for it? Right.
Right.
It's really to remind us that collectively we stay focused on the impacts for people. and then make the tech work for that outcome.
And see, that's where I could see us, because I'm always thinking about community, our constituency, and the world that we live in, and seeing where are there possible collaboration, partnerships, strategic alliances there, so that we can collaborate with our high-tech partners, with our, we currently have 65 people on this call who represent either their own organization, non-for-profit organizations, or organizations where we are here to help each other, right? So when we're making tech work for each other, we should look at, between Mastercard and the high-tech ensemble and hugely intellectual capital that we've got, to see where we can have some possible partnership collaboration opportunities so that we can rebuild towards a safer, more resilient, and very inclusive future.
Listen, thank you for saying that. I think we take this as an invitation. We have a very active relationship pipeline into these governments, state, local, and federal, whose job is to serve people. We can easily solicit those problem statements from those governments, and then figure out the partnerships and the technologies that can forward those solutions. And so it's a dog wagging the tail mantra, right? And so I don't know what a partnership between Mastercard and anyone on this call should look like until I know what problem it's trying to solve, right? And so the Lyft partnership is a perfect example. We had one form of partnership before coronavirus, which was mostly in the service of the drivers. So we enabled technology that lets those drivers get paid much more quickly than before. And that was the problem statement we were attacking back then. The cheese moved, as I say, and the problem was now, wow, these people are stuck at home and can't get access to food. So that partnership was now, the tech was working for different set of people, different set of problems, but it was because we had that active thread to identify that problem that we could call to arms the partners that could help with that. So, I'm in the enterprise partnerships group in Mastercard. That's our job, literally, is partnerships. That's our DNA. I have a couple people on my team who manage those partnerships. Anyone, I didn't mean for this to be a solicitation, but I appreciate the invitation. Anyone on this call who wants to help us serve city, state, and government, federal governments, you know how to find me. I am 24/7 on my cell phone, on social, on email, on Zoom. You name. I think if the weather's right, I think I can pick up the smoke signals if you send them in the right direction. We're open for business when it comes to this mantra and partners that can help us forward that ambition. 1000%.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I think we're close to time's up. There's still questions in here. Viv, Omar, I'll take your lead on how you wanna, if you want to answer anything else, or if you want to wrap it up, or what you want to do. My time, I am at your mercy.
Well, I want to be respectful of your time and everybody else's time, but if you have a few more minutes, we still have plenty of folks on the call. Yeah. If you want to take some of the questions that have been posed, we'd love to continue the conversation.
Yeah, I've got a few more minutes. You want me to find a question, or is there one that you've spotted?
Why don't you pick one last question from the chat if you want, and then we'll wrap it up.
Well, I see one person that is from Juarez that went to school in El Paso, so shout out to Ana Sofia. I had to work that in there.
Thank you. I'm actually in Juarez right now, visiting the staying for quarantine with the family. Work at Seattle Microsoft.
I'm missing the food, by the way. I touched on this actually from you, Anna. I touched on this, the broadband piece, but this concept of, we haven't talked a lot about yet on this call, which is parents and school. And listen, I'll tell you one thing, I'm good at some things. Being a a kindergarten teacher is not one of them. So one thing is access to the technology and the broadband and the toolkits, but you know, I would argue that my daughter's pre-K teacher is probably not equipped to do my job any more than I'm equipped to do hers, right? And so I think that's a reality for parents that are now all of a sudden thrust into being educators. That's probably one of the most understated gaps that we've had to overcome. I'm not a expert on the topic other than I've experienced it. But to the technology point, I do think that, you know, this is one of those things that the paradigms have been edging up, right? We've had things like Khan Academy and distance learning, and like I would say we have flirted with the true power of remote learning. And if one of those silver linings could be a much more powerful way to deliver quality education remotely, think about how much more accessible that could be for kids even in rural places, who all of a sudden, you know, it's much more accessible to attend a lecture from the best professor on the planet on a topic, instead of being confined to your geography, to your border. And I'll use this to say one last thing. I did a TEDx talk in El Paso actually last fall, and it was about empathy, but it was also about borders. And
when are you going to publish that?
It's coming. It's coming. It's on the website, I think, but I'll push it out. But it hits on this topic, which was, I was talking about empathy, but I was also talking about the seemingly randomness of borders. That and Ana, you'll know this in El Paso, Anapra is literally 100 yards from the University of Texas El Paso. Anapra is like a colonia base, is a undeveloped part of Juarez. It still has dirt floor shacks. It's like a shanty. It's literally G could probably hit a golf ball from the university to Anapra. And what but a river separates those people's futures, right? My grandfather was born in Anapra, and his journey to where he ended up was very different than mine. I went to UTEP, right? So our origin was in many respects no more than 100 yards different, but our trajectory couldn't, was 1,000 miles different, right? And so bringing this back to digital and education and work and things like that, think about how well we could destroy some of those barriers and borders if we double down on this technology and get it right. Like I don't think it's right. It's not quite right, right? Like it depends too much on me to try to be a good kindergarten teacher. So it's not good enough yet. But if we can get it there, then that kid born in Anapra might have a much similar trajectory to someone born 100 yards away in El Paso. So that's I do think we should try to invest some collective energy in those sorts of things that can break down barriers to prosperity.
And I think like how you said, like giving like access to everyone, because some people might not afford the internet, they cannot afford a computer. So how can the city help? And us as individuals and citizens, how can we help those communities too? Yeah.
And in so many other ways, in other parts of our lives and humanity, we've figured that out, right? So I have every bit of confidence that I know for a fact we're capable. The only question remains, whether we'll accomplish it, whether we will find the fortitude to press forward in the right direction, break down these barriers, use technology for all of the potential that it has to create a completely different life trajectory. You talk about inclusion, you talk about all these different things that could change people's lives forever. It's right here and it's right now. And the very last thing I'll say, I promise, unless you guys want more, is for every person saying they're bored at home, I hope there are 2 people not bored at home, right? That are leaning in whatever way they can to press society forward, no matter the obstacle.
Miguel, thank you so much for your time. I'll be the first to say that I am anything but bored at home. I have not been more busy ever in my entire life.
That's right.
I read all these people, you know, doing Netflix marathons, and I'm like, man, I can't like manage to even turn the TV on and watch anything, even just to wind down, because we've been so busy with, you know, the shift at HITEC, and, you know, with our 2 young kids at home, and working to balance that. And my wife is a professional and super busy as well. You know, I appreciate your time and everybody's time here. I love the hashtag that you've been pushing out on social media, stay home but not still. And I think that really, you know, highlights what I think we, all of us as leaders, need to be doing, and not being still and not being satisfied, and continuing to look for those things that we can do to stay active, to help others, to bring people together and have a real impact on our lives today, and have an impact on the future, which in so many ways is unknown. But I want to thank you, Miguel, for your time and your thoughts. I think this has been incredibly inspiring, incredibly insightful. So thank you for your time. Thank you for everyone for joining us. This week is kind of unique. We actually have another webinar tomorrow. We are announcing a really exciting thing that we're doing in partnership with PwC. We launched a test of their digital fitness platform for a small number of HITEC members at our last summit in October. And we're going to be making a major announcement where everybody's going to have access. Everybody that's part of the HITEC community is going to have access to this incredible tool that enables our leaders and our executives and our members to continue to learn valuable and important topics in technology in a way that is fun, that is quick. It's micro learning, small bites of learning, and you can actually track your learning in different areas. And so it's something we're really excited about. So we hope that you'll join us tomorrow, Friday, April 24th at 2 p.m. Via a Zoom webinar. But you know, we're looking to continue to stay engaged with the HITEC community. We want to continue to do this. We want to continue to have these types of conversations that have a real impact on people's lives and in the way that people are approaching our new reality. And so this is a two-way street, and I'm really happy that we had such a great dialogue today with you, Miguel. And we want to continue that dialogue, not just on these calls, but in everything that we do. And so if you have an idea, if you have a topic, if you have something that you want to present, if you have another leader that you want us to reach out to, that you want to hear from, just, you know, hit me up on email, Viviana, Susana, Christine. We are here to serve you. And I've said this before, you know, we made a very clear decision that throughout this crisis, throughout this pandemic, we want to lead through service. And this is our way to serve our community by bringing people together, by having thoughtful and important conversations. So please tell us how we can continue to do that. So with that, Miguel, thank you. Viv and team, thank you for your continued work to help us bring our community together. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, a great Friday, a great weekend. And we can't wait to be able to see you all in person. Keep up the great work. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.